In a world where global giants battle for technological supremacy, where the headlines are dominated by Silicon Valley's next disruption, and China's manufacturing dominance feels untouchable, there lies a quiet storm brewing in the heart of Southeast Asia, a place shaped by war, then reborn through sheer resilience. A country once forgotten in the margins of modern progress, now rising with a velocity that has caught even the world's most powerful nations off guard. This isn't just an economic comeback, it's a strategic, calculated ascent, one built on youth, innovation, and relentless ambition. In boardrooms from New York to Tokyo, whispers are turning into boardroom slides. Global brands are shifting factories, investors are watching, and yet most people still have no idea what's coming. This is the rise of Vietnam, and it may just be the most important story in the next chapter of global power. Today, we pull back the curtain on a nation that has defied every expectation. A country once synonymous with conflict is now emerging as one of the world's fastest-growing economies. In just a few decades, Vietnam has transformed from post-war ruin to a rising force in technology, manufacturing, and innovation. The skyline tells part of the story, the data tells the rest. Today, Vietnam manufactures for the world's biggest tech brands. Its engineers code for international startups. Its streets buzz with youth, energy, and digital ambition. But this isn't luck, and it's far from accidental. Vietnam's rise is the result of bold reforms, quiet strategy, and relentless human potential. The kind that doesn't just compete with global powers, it threatens to redefine them. In this story, we'll uncover how it all happened, and what's coming next. The rise of Vietnam isn't a trend, it's a turning point. To understand where Vietnam is today, we have to begin in the ruins of where it once was. For much of the 20th century, Vietnam was a nation torn apart by war, bombed, divided, and battered, its cities reduced to rubble, its people burdened with the scars of a generation lost to conflict. And when the dust finally settled in 1975, what remained was not a triumphant nation, but a fragile one, isolated, underdeveloped, and desperately in need of direction. Poverty was widespread, infrastructure was crumbling, the war was over, but survival was just beginning. Then, in 1986, everything changed. In a bold, almost radical move, the Vietnamese government introduced a sweeping series of reforms known as Doi Moi, meaning renovation. These reforms quietly marked the end of Vietnam's centralized economy and opened the door to the free market. For the first time in modern history, Vietnam allowed private enterprise. Foreign investment trickled in. Small factories emerged, trade routes reopened. At the time, few outside the country even noticed. But inside Vietnam, the seeds of a new era had been planted. Not with headlines, but with hard hats. Not with speeches, but with silent determination. This wasn't just a recovery, it was a reset. And it laid the foundation for one of the most explosive economic growth stories in modern Asia. By the early 2000s, the world began to take notice. After years of careful reforms and quiet rebuilding, Vietnam had emerged with something the global economy couldn't ignore. A perfect storm of opportunity, cheap labor, a disciplined young workforce, political stability in an unpredictable region, and above all, a government that didn't just allow foreign investment, it welcomed it with open arms. One by one, the world's biggest brands came knocking. Samsung, Intel, Nike, Apple. They weren't just outsourcing to Vietnam, they were building in Vietnam. The country became a vital link in the world's supply chain, a rising star in electronics, textiles, and consumer goods. Entire industrial parks sprang up seemingly overnight, ports were expanded, roads were widened, rural areas began to transform into economic zones humming with machinery and global capital. From smartphones to sneakers, circuit boards to clothing racks, Vietnam was no longer just producing goods, it was producing leverage. But this wasn't just a matter of low wages. This was strategy, a national playbook that positioned Vietnam not just as a backup, but as a serious contender in the global manufacturing arena. The world wanted faster, cheaper, more stable supply chains. Vietnam delivered, and delivered with precision. And behind the headlines, a more important transformation was happening. The foundation of a tech future was being quietly assembled, one factory at a time. For years, China was the world's factory, the center of global manufacturing and the cornerstone of international supply chains. But as tensions rose, as trade wars began to simmer, and as companies realized the risks of relying on a single giant, a new strategy was born: China plus one. The idea: keep operations in China, but add another country into the mix, one with lower costs, fewer political risks, and rising capabilities. Enter Vietnam. It wasn't just nearby, it wasn't just affordable. Vietnam offered something China couldn't: neutrality. In the shadows of US-China trade disputes, Vietnam became the middle ground, a safe harbor in a sea of uncertainty. American tech giants began diversifying. Taiwanese and Japanese firms increased investments. European manufacturers signed new trade deals. Ports in Da Nang and Haiphong expanded. Highways connecting industrial zones to shipping routes were upgraded. And all across Vietnam, the phrase China plus one became more than a strategy. It became an opportunity, one the country was uniquely prepared to seize. This moment wasn't accidental. Vietnam had spent decades building trust, opening markets, training workers, and developing infrastructure, waiting for the world to turn its eyes in their direction. When it finally did, Vietnam didn't just show up. It stepped in, ready, focused, and absolutely determined to deliver. For years, Vietnam built for the world, assembling smartphones, stitching shoes, and exporting on behalf of global giants. But now, Vietnam is building something else, its own future, in the heart of Hanoi and the skyscrapers of Ho Chi Minh City. A new wave is rising, a generation of coders, founders, and engineers, not waiting for opportunity to knock, but creating it. The result? A booming tech and startup ecosystem that's earning global attention. From fintech giants like Momo to e-commerce leaders like Tiki.Vietnam to tech unicorns like VNG, Vietnam is producing innovation, not just products. Venture capital is flowing. Co-working spaces are packed. Hackathons light up the weekends. Government support is growing, with digital infrastructure, tax incentives, and national strategies focused on AI, blockchain, and 5G. And the talent: young, educated, digitally native. Vietnam graduates over 400,000 STEM students every year, many of whom are staying home to build, not just follow. In some circles, Vietnam is already being called the next Singapore. But make no mistake, this isn't just about catching up. It's about carving out a new model, one that blends Eastern resilience, Western speed, and a uniquely Vietnamese spirit, one startup at a time. Beneath the skyscrapers, behind the code, and beyond the factories, the real power of Vietnam's rise lies in something simple: its people. Over 70% of the population is under the age of 35, one of the youngest, most energized demographics in Asia. And they're not just young. They're connected, they're digital, and they're hungry to shape the future. You see it everywhere. In cafes where laptops light up late into the night. In TikTok, creators filming skits and startups side by side. In mobile-first lifestyles where payments, communication, and business all live in a single app. English fluency is rising. STEM education is prioritized. Internet penetration is already over 75%. This generation didn't inherit digital tools. They were born into them. They aren't waiting for Silicon Valley to hand them blueprints. They're building their own. And in a world racing to digitize, automate, and evolve, Vietnam's most valuable resource isn't oil, gold, or even its location. It's this: a generation of bold, tech-savvy, globally minded young people, ready to move fast, think smart, and redefine what it means to rise. For decades, Vietnam rose quietly. But now, the world is listening. In 2023, the signals became too loud to ignore. A record wave of foreign investment, massive infrastructure projects breaking ground across the country, and a series of high-stakes trade agreements, from the CPTPP to deals with the EU, Japan, and South Korea, positioning Vietnam as a trusted global partner. But perhaps the boldest move of all was Vietnam's pivot into semiconductors. With supply chains strained and chip production under geopolitical pressure, Vietnam stepped up, with plans to invest billions, train engineers, and attract the world's biggest tech players. Even Tesla took notice. Discussions around supply chains, raw materials, and possible partnerships sparked headlines and pointed to something bigger. Vietnam wasn't just following trends, it was setting them: high-speed rail, smart cities, clean energy hubs. With its strategic location, growing tech ecosystem, and massive youth advantage, Vietnam is no longer a backup plan, it's becoming the blueprint for how emerging nations can leapfrog into the future. And as other economies slow down or struggle to adapt, Vietnam's rise might not just continue, it might accelerate, faster than anyone predicted. No growth story is perfect, and Vietnam's rise, as remarkable as it is, isn't without its challenges. Rapid urbanization has strained infrastructure. Pollution in major cities has surged. Income inequality between urban and rural areas remains stark. And like many fast-growing economies, Vietnam still wrestles with bureaucracy, corruption, and the pressure to modernize its institutions. Traffic jams choke its booming cities. Air quality often dips below safe levels. Farmers and villagers in remote provinces still wait for the same opportunities seen in tech hubs like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City. But here's what makes Vietnam different. It's not ignoring these problems, it's confronting them. Environmental reforms are gaining ground, with green energy projects, electric transportation, and sustainable farming initiatives. Anti-corruption drives have begun reshaping public trust, and with international pressure and the world watching, Vietnam has more incentive than ever to level up. The question now is simple. Can Vietnam not only rise, but stay risen? Can it become the next Asian tiger, agile, advanced, and inclusive? Or will the weight of its challenges hold it back? The answer is unfolding. Vietnam's rise is one of the most underrated stories in global economics. From war-torn past to digital frontier, the country has built its future brick by brick. Tech, talent, strategy, and opportunity, all coming together. But here's the thing. The world is waking up to Vietnam's potential, and that might be the most exciting part. The question is, will you pay attention before it's too late? Will you invest in the next wave of innovation before the world sees Vietnam for what it truly is? Because what we're witnessing today is just the beginning. And tomorrow could be the moment Vietnam becomes a cornerstone of the global economy. The question is, will you be part of it? Drop a comment. Do you think Vietnam will be the next global powerhouse? And if you found this video insightful, give it a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the future of global tech.